station, Manx Radio.
This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service.
Manx Radio.
Stephanie Gray is well known for a variety of reasons. She's devoted to her church, the Promenade Methodist Church here in Douglas, and she's a member of the prom team who are working hard to reshape and equip the prom space as a new resource that can be used and enjoyed by everyone in the local community, not just the prom church family. Stephanie is also a respected Methodist local preacher and a fine actress, coming from a family which, through several generations, has given so much to the Manx stage and to the Guild, the Manx Music Festival. Now, you probably think I'm going to say that Stephanie is my guest today. Well, actually, she isn't. But it was Stephanie who told me that her daughter Pia, a qualified midwife, has just spent the last 4 months living with and learning from pregnant women a long way from home. And when I discovered that Pia has been in Sierra Leone, which by coincidence is the African country twinned with the Isle of Man through the Methodist churches in both countries, I felt this was a story that we needed to hear. So Pia will be joining me after this little oasis of calm that I really hope you'll enjoy, a beautifully prayerful arrangement of O Breath of Life, Come Sweeping Through Us.
O breath of life, come sweeping through us. Revive thy church with life and power. O breath of life, come cleanse me, renew us, and fit thy church to meet this hour. O wind of God, come bend us, break us, till humbly we confess our need. Then in thy tenderness remake us, revive, restore, for this we plead. O breath of love, come breathe within us, renewing thought and will and heart. Come, love of Christ, afresh to win us. Revive thy church in every part.
O Breath of Life, Come Sweeping Through Us, brought to us by the London Fox Singers. And now let's listen to Pia's story. So Pia, let's start by you telling us something about yourself.
My name is Pia. I am a midwife. I qualified in 2018 from Nottingham University. I have worked in Chesterfield. I briefly worked in the Isle of Man, and I have worked in various trusts around London since being qualified. My speciality has more been birth than anything else, so supporting high-risk labouring women through their birth journey and into the immediate postpartum period. I've always felt a strong calling to go and work or volunteer in a different setting, lower socioeconomic setting, to lend my skills to them and learn from them about the barriers that they face there, and just grow my understanding about the world and the challenges that different people face. The way that I ended up in Freetown in Sierra Leone is I put my application in through various charities and NGOs, contacting them individually sometimes. We have a family friend who worked in Sierra Leone during Ebola, so that is why I was drawn to the country and applied within the country as well. And Aberdeen Women's Centre was one of the first places that responded and showed interest, and we entered into discussion, and then I ended up going and volunteering there from the beginning of November last year till the end of January this year.
Sierra Leone is a poor country. As you're saying there, Pia, it's the reason that you wanted to go there. So what were your own living conditions like?
I lived within the compound. There were still some challenges there. Sometimes the power would go out because of outages from the provider. So sometimes there would be no electricity, no internet, things like that. The water was usually on all the time. They either would collect rainwater or buy in water for the hospital and the accommodation. Outside of the compound, there's a very big disparity, I would say, in wealth and more levels of poverty than I would say that I truly understood before going there. So part of my induction was seeing how they recruited women. So to recruit women, they would go to the slums. So there's several slums around Freetown, and we would literally go round and wandering up and down like the little sort of streets, because essentially a lot of the houses are built out of corrugated irons and they're all quite closely packed together. And we'd be wandering around shouting and asking if anyone had seen any belly women, which is what they call the pregnant women. We'd be wandering around looking and trying to spot these pregnant women, or following instructions where there might be a belly woman. We could go and assess and try and recruit to come deliver at the hospital, because the mission of the hospital is to provide care for the most poor, vulnerable and needy women, so those living in the slums, focusing more on teenagers as well. And it was very densely packed, so you could see how disease or infection could spread quite readily within the slums. You'd have livestock, pigs or chickens wandering around the slums as well. There wasn't really any waste management or good waste management, so there was a lot of like just rubbish thrown in the waterways, in the rivers, on the beaches, on the street, either that or they would burn it. Some women were fortunate enough to have electricity or maybe even like a fridge, but a lot of them had like a mattress on the floor and not much else. And nowhere really had plumbing, so everyone would normally go to the toilet like outside or at the back, especially more so in the rural places. But everyone was always very friendly. There was a very, very big community vibe. People would cook together, sing together, dance together. There was always like music somewhere. There was a very big culture of sharing. So not everybody had like a mobile phone. So for the women that we recruited, if they didn't have a phone, their neighbour might have a phone or their uncle might have a phone. So we'd take their number to be able to contact them.
Pia, I'm guessing that this is a huge contrast to any of your previous working conditions. So, what did your work involve here in Sierra Leone?
I was mainly based at Aberdeen Women's Centre, but I did also go to one of the main, well, the tertiary hospital, the biggest tertiary hospital, PCMH, which people call cottage there colloquially. And it was always going to be different to working in a high income country. They're very innovative. They find different ways of doing things and going around things to be able to provide care. But obviously, it's in a very resource limited setting. So a lot of things that we would only use once, they have to use several times and find ways to wash, clean and upkeep for use. Worked mainly in like the labour ward and the main ward. So women would come in and be triaged, and then they'd either go to the main ward or go into the labour room. And one of the challenges that I found very difficult is that they don't give women any pain relief during labour. So it's just an expense they can't have on top of everything else. Their aim is to give women free medication, because you have to buy medication that, despite the fact the government introduced the free healthcare initiative, which is supposed to provide free healthcare to all lactating women, pregnant mothers and children under 5. In practice, it just doesn't really happen. So yeah, their priority is more like, say, things like antibiotics, anti-malaria medication, which is a really big problem in the country. And malaria, a lot of women have children die very young from the disease. So I ended up buying some yoga balls to try and help as a non-pharmacological pain management technique. Most women there would labour and deliver, and they would be on the beds, flat on their back. And sometimes on the ward, it would be very, very busy. So sometimes you could have 2, 3 women in a bed, and it would be a mix of pregnant women, women that have given birth, which made the mornings very interesting. Sometimes you'd come on and you'd be trying to find women and looking around and shouting their names, and my accent didn't help. I think people couldn't understand me sometimes. A lot of women had similar names, so you'd be calling Aizatu Dumbuya, and like 2 different women would answer. And they weren't allowed birth partners where I was, so they would be by themselves, and then we would support them, and their partners would bring in like food and water for them. The doctors and the midwives there were very, very resilient because they obviously saw more poor outcome cases than I was used to seeing. And they really take everything in their stride with all the barriers that they face and challenges that they have to overcome. It was very different, and I am definitely much more appreciative of the NHS after being there.
Longing for peace, our world is troubled. Longing
I'm talking this morning with Pia, with her strong Manx roots planted firmly in the Gray family, and a career as a midwife on the adjacent island. A career that she stepped away from for some months to work as a volunteer midwife in Freetown in Sierra Leone. Pia, all healthcare work is important, isn't it? But why is the care of pregnant women such a concern in Sierra Leone?
At one point, Sierra Leone had the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. So, with a lot of international help, they have really brought down the number of women dying each year. They've still got a lot of work to do. But like I said previously, the aim for the hospital is to serve and provide care to the poorest and most vulnerable women in society who would not be able to afford the medication or care that the NGO provides. Things like the refeeding outpatient clinic. People come there when their children are very malnourished and they're given sort of a special type of like food to feed them up. Or you can come and present with your child and they will give you medication. If you deliver at the hospital, they'll provide vaccines for your child for maternity, and it saves women's lives. The biggest risks in the country are hemorrhage. So a lot of women are still dying from bleeding postnatally after they have had their baby, and they essentially bleed to death because it's not recognised why they are bleeding and interventions aren't made to stop the bleeding, and blood is not given. Infection, that's still a big issue for the country. And when you go out and recruit these women from the slums, when you tell them that they can come, they're so joyous when they're selected. Like, it really is a lifeline for them and that child, because it's the guarantee that if there is an issue, if your baby isn't moving so much, if you have a really bad headache and you think you might have preeclampsia, if your belly's hurting and you're not quite term, so the baby's preterm, it's knowing that if you can get to the hospital, you will be seen by an appropriate practitioner who will make sure that you and your baby are okay. You will be given medication to safeguard you and your baby, and care will be provided to you when you're giving birth and in the postnatal period. And if there are any issues postnatally with things like infection or anything like that, you will be seen and essentially saved in some cases, because there were some very unwell women. And in the more gynae part of the hospital, it's affiliated with the Freedom from Fistula Foundation. So that provides care to women who were in obstructed labour, and this sort of gives them sort of that second lease of life. And the centre also tries to provide sexual and reproductive health for these women. So if they present with any infections or they want to try space their children, which is really recommended, they will provide medication to support that as well, because a lot of these women are falling pregnant, especially the teenagers, or contracting sexually transmitted diseases because they're having to sell their bodies for food, for somewhere to stay, because they just don't have a lot of job opportunity. A lot of them leave school young to start working to help provide for their families, or they're sent to the capital to work. And these are the girls that the hospital really tries to sort of provide care for, safeguard, and hopefully steer them onto a different path in the future of life.
Pia, you've left Freetown now, but you haven't turned your back on the Aberdeen Women's Centre. In fact, you're actively fundraising for them now, aren't you? So what are you hoping to achieve?
A lot of the times when the women come in and they're in more extreme poverty, sometimes they don't have pads to wear afterwards once the baby is born. So it would be to provide some pads for them, sort of like emergency supply of nappies. At the minute, it's people in the hospital buying spare ones or borrowing them from women in nearby beds if they have any spare ones, and just some spare clothes and toiletries for the women that come in and unexpectedly deliver their babies early, or they just don't have enough funds to even come in having bought any baby clothes, which happens sometimes with the young girls, the teenagers. They just don't have any money, essentially. And sometimes they've been ostracised by their families as well. And the men sometimes don't claim the baby as their own either. So they'll just have nothing, essentially. So to hopefully provide them with some like toiletries or maybe like a small fund, just help buy them food, depending on funds, to try and get some new sheets for the hospital. The ones that they have are hanging on by a thread. They don't actually fit the mattresses and they just get torn every time that they're washed. So just to have a little bit more protection between the women and the mattresses, and depending if there in the future is more funding, maybe focus on something like provision of anti-D for the women. If you are a negative blood group and your baby is a positive blood group, what can happen is during birth, if your baby's blood mixes with your blood a little bit, your body can create antibodies because it recognizes the baby's blood as foreign. And then the next time you get pregnant, the mother's body can attack the baby if the baby is again a positive blood group. So the NGO don't actually provide anti-D for the women. It's just an expense that they can't take on top of everything else. So one day in the future, if I can generate enough funding, would be to hopefully provide women that deliver there with that, because it's essentially like anywhere between $150 and $200, and the NGO can't take on that cost, and I mean the women themselves can't take on that cost at all. But the focus of the funding would be more to provide emergency mother and babies packs for the women who are in extreme poverty that come in and deliver, just to give them something to start with.
Because of the twinning arrangement between the Methodist Church in Sierra Leone and the Methodist Church here on the island, I'm sure that Pia's story, her experiences, will be shared around our local Methodist churches. But of course, if you'd like to know more, your best point of contact is Pia's mum, Stephanie Gray, at the Promenade Methodist Church. And my thanks to Pia for talking to us this morning. And now let's end with a look at our notice board, which has got so much in it this week that it's a feature all of its own. Port Erin Gospel Church have 2 meetings today and next Sunday at 11:30 this morning and 7 p.m. this evening, and Reverend Wesley McDowell will preach at all services this Sunday and next Sunday too. Acclaimed organist Robert Coates is on the island this weekend, giving a series of concerts as part of the Isle of Man Organist Association 75th anniversary celebrations, and this afternoon he'll be giving a concert in Lezayre Church and Arts Centre. That's on the Loop Road off Lezayre Road at Churchtown. It starts at 3 o'clock today, admission is free, and there's a warm welcome for all. The Mariners Choir will be in Union Mills Methodist Chapel tonight at 6:30, and I have the privilege of joining them there. Jane Corkill is the soloist and John Riley the organist, and as always there'll be supper and community hymn singing to follow, and we'd be very pleased to see you there. Looking now to the week ahead, and Reverend Janet Corlett is once again offering a different way to journey through Lent, with a series of weekly walks, every Monday morning in a different part of the island. Join Janet with Marinda Farger, Andrew Foxon and Phil Crane each Monday morning for a gentle walk between 2 and 3 miles in length, with refreshments provided at the end. And the first walk is tomorrow from Christchurch in Laxey to Agnish Chapel. Meet at 9:45 a.m. for a 10 a.m. start. You don't need to pre-book, just meet at Christchurch in Laxey. But the best way to stay fully informed of any last-minute changes is to join the WhatsApp group that Reverend Janet has set up. All you need to do is text Reverend Janet on 301 910, 301 910, and she will put you into the group. And the Bride Wesley Guild meets again tomorrow, Monday night, at 7:30 in Bride Methodist Church Hall. And this is another evening when you'll need to get there early if you want a seat, because the guest speaker tomorrow night, sharing another selection of his favourite music, is the one and only Gareth Moore. It's a free evening, everyone's welcome at this long-established social group, and there will, of course, be refreshments to follow. The very popular Lent lunches start this week. Simple lunches raising money for local and global charities. These are the ones I know about, but I'm not sure if my list is complete, so do please let me know if someone is missing. Starting tomorrow, St George's Lent lunches are each Monday in the Parish Hall on Alexander Drive here in Douglas, served between noon and 1:30. Soups, including a vegetarian option, will be served with bread and cheese and cake too. 2 charities will benefit, the Great North Air Ambulance Service and the Manx Family Centre in Westmoreland Road. There's no fixed charge for the lunches, just whatever cash donation you'd like to make. Head to St Paul's Church Hall in Ramsey on a Tuesday for soup, bread, a dessert and hot drinks, served from 11:30am to 2pm with a charge of £8 per person. The charity being supported in Ramsey this year is Ed Space, where it's okay to not be okay. 2 representatives from the charity will be at the lunch on Tuesday, March the 3rd, to talk about the work of the charity. And if you're down south on Tuesdays during Lent, call into the Abbey Church Hall in Ballasalla between noon and 2pm for homemade soup, bread, cheese and biscuits, fruit and hot drinks for just £7 per person, with a reduction for children. Proceeds are for church funds, and donations to the charity WaterAid would be much appreciated. Every Wednesday during Lent, Onken is the place to be. Starting this Wednesday, the 25th, call in to St Anthony's Pastoral Centre in Onken, where you can enjoy a choice of soups with crusty bread and a variety of desserts, with coffee and tea, served from noon until 2pm. The cost is £8 per person and everyone's welcome. Back into Douglas now, and St Thomas's Church, just off the promenade by the Gaiety Theatre, are serving their Lent lunches as usual each Friday from 12 noon to 1:30pm, with a suggested donation of £7. And in other notice board news, on Thursday the 26th, it's coffee and chat time in Ballakilferrick Chapel in the hills above Colby. Open from 11 till 12:30, there's a warm welcome awaiting one and all. Also on Thursday the 26th at 3pm in Ballagary Chapel in St Mark's, it's time for tea at 3, a sumptuous afternoon tea served, as the name suggests, from 3 o'clock onwards. And also on Thursday the 26th, it's time for Tabor on Thursday at Port St Mary Methodist Church. Starting on Thursday evening at 7:30, it's a quiz night with a sausage or bacon bap, and the cost is £8 per person. Please book with Sue Allen via email suepot56@gmail.com, suepot56@gmail.com. On Friday the 27th, Begarrow Chapel, just outside Kirkmichael, is the place to be if you enjoy country and western music. An evening with Dickie and Desi Kelly starts there at 7:30 on Friday evening. £10 admission includes refreshments and fancy dress is optional. Anne Quayle from Begarrow says that as the Belay Road is being resurfaced from now until the end of March, there's a road closure in place, which means Begarrow Chapel can only be accessed by the TT course end and not the Peel Road end. But Anne goes on to say that she's had clearance from the DOI that parking in the area in the evening should be no more of a problem than usual. And ending with a look at next weekend, the Mariners Choir will be in Kirkchrist, Russian Parish Church, next Sunday, March the 1st, for a service starting at the usual time of 6:30, at which Canon Joe Heaton will preach, and everyone will be made very welcome to the service and the supper afterwards. And that's all that we have time for now. But I'll be back tonight at 9 o'clock with Sundown. I'd love you to come and join me in our virtual lounge for a great selection of easy listening music, plus your requests and dedications. And so, until whenever we meet again, this is Judith saying thank you for listening and wishing you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week and a very good morning.
Station, Manx Radio.